Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Under the Rainbow podcast, the official podcast of the Fenton Pride Collective. I am your host. My name is Kai Orvis. I am the president of the Fenton Pride Collective, and I use they, them pronouns preferably. Today, we have a special kind of episode for you, an episode that we are calling Bonus Blurb. What it is it's a shorter episode with just me. No guest. It's just me. You get to hear my beautiful voice annoy you for a shorter amount of time than a normal episode. But the topics that we're going to talk about in these bonus blurb episodes, which by the way will come out randomly. It's really honestly whenever I have the time to do them, sit down and do them. But they are topics that are perhaps maybe not a topic that we could spend an hour talking about. Not to say that they're less important, but maybe it's like a smaller topic that we don't really need to spend an hour on, right? So that's what these bonus blurbs are. So you get me for an undisclosed amount of time, however long I feel like I can talk about a topic for. No breaks, nothing like that, just a bonus blurb. So today's topic is the concept of coming out. Now, this is something that we talked about on the first episode, our last episode, with Courtney as the guest, Courtney Matlock. We talked about coming out a little bit and how that kind of plays in the importance of Pride and Pride Month and the LGBTQ plus community celebration and all of that. But I was thinking about it and I was like, well, coming out's kind of a big deal to our community, at least. And the concept is, I guess, kind of foreign if you haven't experienced it. So it's definitely something worth taking a bit more time discussing, really diving into. So I'm going to start off with, I guess, more of my coming out story. I talked about it, a little bit in the first episode, but I'm going to really dive deep into it, just because I want everyone to know about my life all the time. No, but I think stories are fun, and coming out stories sometimes can be enlightening to people. So if you're not familiar with what coming out is, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the idea, the concept, but many people might not be familiar with it. So coming out is basically this idea that when you identify as something other than the norm, which would be, straight, cisgendered, which means basically identifying as the gender that you were born as. You could even say like part of the binary, male or female. Straight cisgender people basically get to live their life without anyone ever guessing what or assuming something other than what they are. So when you come out, you are publicly, officially saying, hey, I'm not straight, I'm not cisgendered, I'm not whatever. Different from the norm is basically the idea. So as we've kind of developed the understanding of the myriad of gender identities and sexual orientations in the world, the current term coming out has been kind of changed, I guess you could say. From my experience and my understanding, coming out was a lot more of basically just saying you were gay up until maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Back in the olden days, it was basically if you came out, you said, hey, I'm gay, or I'm bi, or I'm a lesbian, what have you. Now, I don't know. It's not from my experience because I don't know. I'm out. I haven't. I don't hang. I'm not. I don't hang with. I'm not around that many people that I know of that haven't come out yet. Like I'm around a lot of people that are publicly, outwardly have come out, and you never know anybody's story. But so I don't really know if people nowadays have to quote unquote come out when it comes to gender, but I can tell you my experience. So when I was 13 years old, this was 2007, September of 2007, September 27th of 2007, actually. I remember the day still. So I'll let you do the math on how old I am. I was 13 years old at the time. And it was the night before, I was in 8th grade. It was the night before our canoe trip, our annual, well, not our annual, but every year the 8th grade went on a canoe trip to this local canoe rental, and everybody got a partner, and you teamed up, and you went down this river nearby. And yeah, we spent the day. It was a field trip. And it was the night before. I still remember this. I don't remember, honestly, at the time what compelled me to do it. I think obviously, I was having these confusing thoughts. I will tell you prior to this, like the prior 4 years, actually during this time too, I think technically, I was dating a girl. Um, Obviously, I'm not going to say her name or anything about her, but we had been dating a long, long, long time. We'd met when I had moved, and she was a neighbor, and we hung out all the time. We were inseparable, and we dated for a long, long, long time. And she was a lot of firsts for me. And thankfully, we had hung out. We were like best friends afterward for a while, until our lives kind of grew apart a little bit, and we don't talk as much anymore. But that's beside the point. But it was the night before for the canoe trip, and I didn't call her, this girl that I was dating. I called one of our good friends, and our friend group used to chat on the phone all the time. Landline phones, mind you. Cell phones were not big yet. I think the first iPhone had just come out, so like nobody had it. So I called her on my home phone. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I said something along the lines of, "Hey, I have something to tell you." She was a very understanding friend. And I said, "I think I might be bi." I first came out as bisexual. And I don't remember her reaction, sadly. But, I mean, we were still friends afterward. It was a fine reaction. She was probably something along the lines, "Oh, okay, cool." Or like, I had known that or something. I got a lot of that when I had first come out. I had first come out as bi, and I lived that life, that truth for, I don't know, a year, maybe? Maybe two. I don't know. When you're young, it's hard to remember. But um, I told my friends; they were totally okay with it. I had told my sister over AIM, if y'all can remember that, AOL Instant Messenger. Life was hunky dory, pretty much. Yeah, and then I probably before high school, so maybe it was about a year, or maybe in high school, beginning of high school, I had really realized that I was, at the time, identified as gay. So then I basically had, I guess, a second coming out, but not really. I don't remember much of that. The initial coming out, definitely, but like when I started telling people, "Oh, hey, by the way, I'm not bi, I'm gay." Like I don't know how people took it. Um, I'm assuming it was fine. I'm assuming that it like wasn't a big deal. Luckily, I'm very lucky in that sense. I had really good friends, really supportive friends. I remember as I kind of grew a little bit, I remember telling one of my really good friends at the time, who was a guy, that I was either bi or gay, one of the two. And I remember him, I don't know if he had a big issue with it or what, but we weren't friends for much longer after that. I don't think I ever went over his house afterward again. Um, yeah, so there was a couple of those, which is sad, which sucks. But if you have a friend that doesn't accept you as anything, as your true self, anything other than straight, and cisgendered, then they don't deserve to be your friend. They are not your true friend. Your friends will accept you for who you are, and that's that. Period. Full stop. So, yeah, that happened long, long time ago. And I remember years after that, like it was never. Once I had my initial coming out, I never had to tell people again. Like I don't remember ever between like this within the last 10 probably years, I don't think I've ever had to explicitly say, "Oh, by the way, I'm gay," or like, "Oh, I'm gay" to anybody. And people just know. Once you start living your true life, I think it's really like shown, and yeah, people either accept it or don't, and if they accept it, cool. If they don't, get out of my life, sort of thing, Now that is, I guess, the sexual identity, sexual orientation portion of my life. I did recently, about what, 3, 4 years ago, I guess you could say I quote unquote came out as non-binary. So that is a gender identity. It means to me, and I know there's differing opinions on what different terminology and everything is, and we talked a little bit about terminology in the last episode, but to me it means that I don't identify as male or female. I may have been born one way, but I don't identify as either. I may have different times where I am more one than the other, more masculine versus feminine or whatever, but I'm somewhere in the middle is what I identify as. So that was, and I will say my experience with that has been that it's been well received. I think the people that I had surrounded myself with prior were also accepting of different gender identities, but it's a hard concept to grasp for a lot of people. Gender identity, I don't think, is seen in the same way as sexual orientation is for whatever reason. The concepts of gay and straight or bi or even like pansexual, all of that is easier for people to understand and comprehend than it is for someone to comprehend, oh, you are not the same gender that you were born as. It's like, I don't know, it seems confusing to people, but generally people have been very accepting. I changed my name. I say it in, quote unquote, because it's not legally changed yet. I'm working on that. That's my goal this summer. But for all intents and purposes, I go by Kai now. And that was really well received. I'm thankful for that. People had no issue calling me by my new name. Some of my old friends, like friends that I had a long time, or the how do I say this in a nice way? The more seasoned people in my life, the older people, tended to have a little bit more trouble transitioning from one name to the other. But that seemed, as I'm sure a lot of you can empathize with, but that generally went well. So that's kind of my story. I am also really curious about everyone else's story. So if you're listening and you have a coming out story that you would love to share, we are all ears. We're always all ears here at Fenton Pride Collective. Just send us an email at info at Fenton Pride Collective, or sorry, excuse me. It's info at fentonpride.org. Email us your coming out story. I would love to hear it if you're willing to share, if you want to. Now, I tell you that story, I guess, to kind of give you hope if you are in the realm of maybe I'm not cisgendered, maybe I'm not straight. I hope that kind of gives you hope that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But I do also realize that everyone's coming out is not the same. And a lot of people are stuck in really difficult situations. I don't know if I want to say stuck. Maybe find themselves in really difficult situations and can't come out for fear of being disowned by their family, their friends, their community, their work. While in Michigan, we do have laws that protect us from being discriminated against in the workplace, other states don't. And it doesn't mean that anyone anywhere in Michigan can't and won't, right? So I do realize that coming out can be really difficult for people. And I really am sorry that if you're in that position, that you're in that position. My heart really does go out to you. On the same token, I don't think, and I think a lot of you may empathize with this and think the same way, that coming out really needs to be a thing. So don't think that you do have to come out. I am a millennial through. Actually, I'm kind of closer to Gen Z, but I'm still a millennial. So I'm old. And my generation, we came out. That's what we did. So I think I'm just used to that. I came out with my sexuality. I came out with my gender. Like officially, publicly. It was like a full Facebook post for my gender and everything. I don't think that that's necessary anymore. I think a lot of people think that. I don't think that it has to be a big billboard situation. I don't think that people now, it's not to say don't live your truth, and it's not to empathize with the right wing and say, well, you're not that more special than the rest of us, blah, 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 or we don't need to know your business at home. No. Tell people if you want to tell people. Don't tell people if you don't want to tell people. Live the way that you want to live. I don't think anyone in the LGBTQ plus community or anyone that does not identify as the norm, I don't think anybody owes anybody else an explanation for the way they are. That's it. Period. Point blank. There's no reason that anybody should actually have to come out. There's no reason, also, I guess I'm on a soapbox here, I'm sorry. There's also no reason for anybody to ask. It's inappropriate, it makes no sense. It's none of your business. If someone's talking to you about, I don't know, say someone that was born male and they say, oh, I really loved the Barbie movie. Would you ask, oh, are you gay? Like, why does it matter? What does my sexuality have anything to do with what I liked in a movie? That's a whole other topic for another episode, another day, but I don't think that coming out is a necessity. I don't think you should feel like you have to. Just live your life. It's nobody's business. If you want to make it people's business, awesome. Good for you. Go for it, like I did. If you don't. I think that coming out is this concept in our society, we have to label everything, right? So coming out is really a label for this defining moment in someone's life. And yes, it is defining. It can be defining. In my moment, it was very defining. It was okay. Sometimes I think about my life in the period of pre coming out versus post. And it's like, well, was I out at that time? Okay, yeah, then that makes sense. But I think our society has this need to label it as this moment, this defining moment in everyone's life. So like, oh, did you come out yet? Oh, are you out yet? And there's also, for those of you that don't know, there are some circles in the LGBTQ plus community. I think especially the gay man community, that you have to be out to be in a relationship with somebody else. So if you're in a relationship with someone and they are forcing you to come out, steer clear of that person. That's very unfair to ask of somebody. It's very unfair to do of somebody, to force somebody to come out. Anyway, off the soapbox now. But yeah, so coming out is kind of this thing that is exclusive to the LGBTQ plus community. And it's kind of, I guess, some people may treasure it. Some people may find it to be a special thing for them and honor it and hold it in a good place in their heart. And I do. I'm one of those people. Some people don't care. Some people don't care for it. Some people don't care to do it. But it still is, I guess, for lack of a better term, this sacred thing in our community. And it needs to be respected. Um, some people might not know what it is. But just like anything else in life, if you don't know what it is, educate yourself, figure out what it is. Hopefully, I've been able to tell you a little bit more about what it is today, and just respect it. If it doesn't pertain to you, say cool, move on. I don't think that many people generally have issues with coming out, believe it or not. Like the people that don't identify as LGBTQ plus or an ally. I've never heard anyone be like, "Well, coming out is outrageous." But the way I view it, it's just not necessary nowadays. That's my 2 cents. That's my bonus blurb on it. But if you have any comments, questions, concerns over coming out, feel free to email us. You can always email us at info@fentonpride.org, or you can find us on Facebook, message us, or Instagram at Fenton Pride Collective. I believe both are. So we try to be a good resource for anybody in the Fenton area community to the best of our ability. Otherwise, there are tons of resources online about coming out that you can look into if you are kind of experiencing that. But in any event, I really just wish everybody safe and happy and fulfilling lives in general, whether you come out or don't. Yeah, I honestly just wish the best for everybody. Try to, at least, right? In this crazy world. It might seem difficult at first, coming out, being part of the community, but it really does get better. That classic saying, it gets better. And the more people you find in the community, because it's a very supportive community, the more people you find in it, the better off you are. Just talk to people that have experience, or if you don't know anybody that does, find resources. It's not the end of the world. It does get better, for sure. Thank you for listening to this episode of, I don't know why I said this like that, these. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Under the Rainbow podcast, the official podcast of the Fenton Pride Collective. I have been your host, Kai Orvis. I am the president of the Fenton Pride Collective. Thank you for listening to this bonus blurb. And we will catch you next month for our next episode of Under the Rainbow. Cheers. One last thing before we go. The legal stuff. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered legal health, financial, or educational advice. The individual views expressed in this podcast may not reflect or represent those of the Fenton Pride Collective. Unless stated otherwise, Fenton Pride Collective does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.